I mean, it comes with problems. One of the very interesting things which I paid closest attention to when he was talking is the shortage of funding. Whenever there is no funds, no money, it means there's problems. And definitely, if you don't have this, it will definitely affect the quality of education, and it will affect the classroom, shortage of classroom spaces, trained teachers. All these are endemic problems, and particularly also even the community leadership. These are the kind of things that we are suffering from in the normal situation, and it aggravated also, particularly when we have these refugee issues. This is I think, very interesting, and nowadays when the COVID-19 came, it really aggravated the problem, and it added also more problems to our whatever shortcomings that we have. Anyway, let us open a few comments, because this gentleman actually... okay, and shall we go? Okay, there is a suggestion that we continue with the next presentation and then have a general discussion at the very end. Okay, that's lovely. Okay, next presenter is, who is ready anyway? Somalia. Okay, I hope you don't have the largest refugees. Yeah, please, come on. Yeah. Thank you, please. Then I think we have Kenya. Okay. Kenya ready? It's Kenya. Yeah. Oh, both of you come, whoever that's. First come, first serve. Yeah. All is operative. Alphabetically Kenya. Yeah. Kenya and then Somalia. You want to use that? Please. They will help you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies. I am Amina Said from Somalia, the Commissioner for Refugee and IDPs. On behalf of Somali delegate, Mr. Abdi Fatah, the Director of Education and Section of Coordination, is going to present on behalf of Somali government. Thank you. That's a short information from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Why you love again?
Yeah, almost. Thank you very much. Our chairman today, Professor, colleague delegates from the various member countries of IGAD, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Sylvester Mlambe from Kenya. I work in Kenya as a Director of Policy and Partnerships. I'm not alone. I'm accompanied by some 6 colleagues whom I'll quickly just say their names and raise up your hand. One is Mr. Charles Obiero, Policy and Planning, University Education. Next is Mr. Abdi Aden, University Education, Policy and Planning. Next is Madam Damaris Akoth Otieno, Refugee Affairs Secretariat. We have Dr. Beldina Otieno, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have Ibrahim Mohammed Yusuf, refugee scholar. Very good. And then we have Penikiu Mubikiriro, refugee teacher. Yeah, that's the team that we have from Kenya, and we are glad to be here. We have done a presentation on what we have done so far under the Djibouti Declaration. I think the first one is more generic. That is, Kenya is a member of the IGAD and signatory to the Djibouti Declaration, on the inclusion of refugees and asylum seekers in the national education systems, as well as major human rights conventions and protocols aligned to upholding fundamental human rights and freedoms, which of course includes the Sustainable Development Goals. We in Kenya recognize the importance of including refugees and asylum seekers in the education agenda as critical to the realization of the SDGs and our blueprint strategy, Kenya Vision 2030, and other national aspirations. We subsequently pledged to systematically include refugees at the Global Refugee Forum 2019, contingent on continued international support. We believe as Kenya that education empowers refugees and their host communities by giving them knowledge and skills to live productive, fulfilling, and independent lives. This, according to us, is expected to contribute positively to social and economic development in Kenya and in their respective countries when they return. Next slide. Approximately, Kenya is a host to 539 084 refugees and asylum seekers, and are currently hosted in Kenya, of which up to there we thought we were actually the highest, but we did realize that we are just among the highest. So, and we are saying that of which 50% are under the age of 18, according to our laws. That is the age of children, the people we call children. 84% reside in Dadaab, Kakuma, and Kalobei settlement schemes. 16% are living in urban areas across the country, mingled with the citizens. Approximately 718 refugees and asylum seekers are of school-going age, of which 65% are enrolled in education and training institutions. And of course the rest are not enrolled. Now, status of education. While refugees and asylum seekers follow the Kenya national curriculum, the point we're trying to make there is that we use the same curriculum with them, okay, and sit for the national examinations. Again, they sit for the same examinations as the rest of Kenya. But the point we're trying to make here is that camp-based learning institutions are under the management and financed by UNHCR and international community for almost 3 decades now. The examinations we are talking about are Kenya Certificate of Primary Education and Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education, and of course other examinations that are offered at post-secondary school level. Although the government of Kenya has made a considerable contribution to the education of refugees and asylum seekers over the past 30 years, the governance of these camp-based institutions is still in the hands of international community and has led to the creation of a parallel system which, as you follow my presentation, is what we're trying to work against. Next. What are the government initiatives towards inclusion of refugees into the education systems? And of course, this is mainly pegged on our legal and policy frameworks. In our constitution, which is our mother law, under Article 43, sub-Article 1F, we say that every person has a right to education. And of course, every person means every person on our land. And it stipulates that every child has a right to free and compulsory education under Article 53, sub-Article 1B. And we are saying that Kenya is a signatory to the various relevant international conventions, which according to our constitution again, once we sign those conventions, they become law within our legal system. And we are just given an example of SDGs. Within the Basic Education Act of 2013, we are again reiterating the fact that every child has a right to free and compulsory education, which again enables us to do the inclusion. Under the policy framework, we have our current sessional paper. We call it sessional paper number 1 of 2019, which equally emphasizes the need to have inclusion at all levels. Our sector strategy document 2018 to 2022 equally enumerates the fact that we need to complete the development of the policy on inclusion of refugees and asylum seekers into national education systems by the end of that period, that is 2020 to 2022. So meaning that both our legal and policy frameworks and of course our strategies and plans allow this. Still, what government has done, we have again signed a comprehensive refugee framework for Kenya to guide us towards response to refugee issues across board, not only in education. We have also enacted the Refugee Act 2021, which became law just a few days ago. We are also we have also developed a draft guideline on recognition of prior learning, which of course is quite relevant to refugees because we need to really capture their prior learning. Sometimes documents are not there. Then we have systems to establish levels where we can place them. We are equally working on guidelines on accelerated learning, which again you can see is quite important to the refugees because some of them are overage and they may not have done certain classes, and we need to come up with guidelines which guide us towards accelerating their learning so that they can catch up with their age groups. We are also working on a draft education policy on inclusion of refugees and asylum seekers, as well as the costed plan. So for this one, we were actually delayed by the pandemic because we reached a stage where we were now to validate it by the entire stakeholders within the sector, and then of course look at its approval, and then of course it becomes one of the policies to go by. The costed plan of course was looking at the cost of having inclusion, following our strategic plan. The items and the targets within the strategic plan, we costed them over a period, coming up with several scenarios to see how much it will cost so that we can be able to see how we can together work with partners and see how inclusion can take place. In this one, we are just saying that schools that this is during COVID. We are saying that during COVID, schools and colleges were closed from March 2020 to October 2021, where we went in for what we call partial opening of schools. We targeted the candidate classes that time, which is our grade 4 under the new competence-based curriculum, and our class 8 under the curriculum we are moving away from, and Form 4s. And then of course that went up to December. We realized we can make it. Then we had the whole school population back. And of course when this pandemic came, still on that slide, we went in to develop a COVID response plan to guide us both in response and recovery. And when we developed that particular document, we worked together with our colleagues working under refugee response sections, the UNHCR and all that, and that the whichever plans we had still encompassed both the refugees and the host communities. I think that's the point we're trying to make there. And then the next bullet is that, of course, during that period, we survived through several methods of teaching, which were different from the physical teaching, radio, TV lessons, online learning, of course, partial reopening, I had already said, using pre-recorded information and all that for that particular period. But of course, even as Kenya, we had the challenge of connectivity and things, and that we were not able to maybe reach all our learners, even in host communities, because of lack of facilities. But that affected everybody across board. Again here, we do realize the importance of the inclusion we are talking about production of social cohesion and harmony among humanity, which is important for our own development, and that it also carries many important benefits for learners and teachers, such as access to education grants. And we are just reporting here that even our refugee learners also did access some of our bursaries some of our bursaries. One of them we are calling it, is it a Limu, and so on and so forth. So again, we supported refugee learners just like we have done with our host community children. The next slide is that other point is that we are only saying that we are very uncomfortable with the parallel systems, and we are saying that side-by-side learning between refugees and host communities is beneficial. We are talking about citizenship education, where the differences among themselves is a strength in itself when they are together. So we are cognizant of that particular fact, and that we are not very, very comfortable with an undiscriminatory kind of education. And we are saying that this does ensure that there's accredited learning institutions, or rather that even the refugees get access to accredited learning institutions which are among the host community. And of course, we are also saying that one important point here, which is also beneficial to us as a country, is that the infrastructure which is put for them or for the refugees, once they leave, that infrastructure becomes important to us, and we feel that is very good for us because at least it supports us also as a nation. Then learning together, we are still on that point, promotes peace, social cohesion, which is critical goal of education. Seeing all learners and communities, be they refugees or host communities, have unique capabilities. And learning together promotes sharing of knowledge, and of course brings about the common strength, the citizenship education that I was talking about. Next. At university level, we are talking about giving them incentives. We have some programs under university education where the teachers at that level are given some incentives. We also have a satellite campus in Dadaab to assist with the university education. We also have a campus coming up in Kakuma also to assist with higher education for among refugees. And of course, even UN agencies who are working for these refugees are equally taken care of when we are talking about higher education at the satellite campuses in those areas. We're also saying that in co-curricular activities, we also move together with the refugees towards development of their talents, unique talents in the area of co-curricular activities, so they are part of us as we do our competitions. As much as possible, we have ensured that children and youth, regardless of their ethnic backgrounds or country of origin, will access equitable, inclusive, and quality education. This one we have done through our officers in the field. The quality assurance and standards officers don't segregate. They get to all schools, including the camp schools, to ensure quality. And that, of course, also shows our commitment to ensure that even the refugee students on our land actually get quality education. On the implementation of the action plan, we are saying that refugee and asylum seekers are included in the National Education Sector Plan. I think I'd made that point, but we are still re-emphasizing it there. Currently, we are reviewing that. What we call NEST, National Education Sector Strategic Plan, and we are again working with the UNHCR to make sure that items to do with refugee education are taken care of. We also have our EMIS, Education Management Information Systems. We call it National Education Management Information Systems. We are progressively putting them into our data, all right, to ensure that whichever benefits that ours also get, progressively they'll be able to get. Some of them may not have birth certificates, but we are trying to use what we call proof of registration that we get from our colleagues in immigration. Refugees have been, some camp schools have been registered as public schools, all right? That one we did, it was an initial step towards this, but we did realize that we'd rather anchor all this in a policy. So we did some, but we left it so that once the policy has streamlined everything and provided the framework, then we can continue with it. Refugees have been included in government and private sector scholarships. I think that one I had said earlier, Wings to Fly and all that. Actions responding to the distinct learning needs of refugees. National guidelines for accelerated education. I think that one I said earlier. Prior learning, We have the guidelines now, almost out. We are done with the validation. I think it only requires approval, and will be there. Then actions toward development and longer-term financing arrangement. This one, we have done it in 2 ways. One is that our costed plan and the policy for inclusion of refugees and asylum seekers, we had a forum with our partners in our country so that we took them through the policy and we took them through the costed plan. And they agreed with us, and they actually gave us a nod to continue, a good indication that once we're ready, we'll be able to get the support that we need for this activity. Plans are underway to develop that, which I've just talked about, long-term arrangement. Challenges, most refugees lack proper identification. I think that cuts across, and sometimes when you want to do placements, you have issues. Others have undergone different education systems. That's also an issue when it comes to placements. Level of education of these children sometimes is difficult to establish, but of course that's what we're trying to work on under our prior learning arrangement. Language barriers, and then of course for this intervention we have issues of funding, also an issue, but we're trying to work on it. As a way of conclusion, we want to say that we want to continue to promote an enabling policy environment which explicitly and adequately reflects the needs of refugees. We want to maintain education services for refugees for as long as they're in our country, with special attention to increasing the number of qualified teachers. We're still trying to work on that together with our partners. The implementation of the new curriculum. Minister of Education, we had to train refugee teachers on CBC. Sorry. Yeah, I'm just saying. I hope it has gone. Okay, I was just saying that we have our new curriculum called competence-based curriculum that focuses on what a learner will be capable of doing after the learning process, rather than what the learner may purport to know. You know, competence. We are focusing on competence. But of course, there are other things to it. So this one is a new curriculum in our country, now at grade 5. Next year it will go to grade 6. And of course, in the spirit of leaving no one behind, SDG 4, and of course our laws, I think I remember I was one of them who was at Dadaab camp to take our refugee teachers, both those who are refugees who are teachers, and also Kenyans who are also teachers there through this, and then strengthen the provision of secondary education. Particularly, secondary education is going to be very expensive in our country because of the pathways. We are talking about talent development. And then number 4, expanding certified opportunities for tertiary education. In the medium term, there is a plan to further work on integration of refugees, particularly when we go to our new strategic plan, 2023-2027, and of course the county integrated development plans. We want to make sure that we don't leave out this particular subject. And of course we want to speed up consultations so that we complete with the policy, and then of course we want to strengthen coordination and convene actors around a shared vision building on global relationships and pledges, and engage these partners on their roles in delivery and financing. And in conclusion, I want to say, all in all, we are dedicated to the success of inclusion and are working on its success. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful, interesting presentation. And it's very interesting, particularly this implementation of action plan and the efforts that's been taken by the Kenyan government in order to put this in action. Of course, all these, they have problems, and all of us, we are aware what kind of problems that are there. And the real shocking problem is this COVID-19, the pandemic here, which actually affects directly the students' educational system and the governments. Okay, I think we should move, and thank you also keeping your time. let's see, the next gentleman is Somalia. Okay, thank you. You want to present from there? Yeah, okay. You have 20 minutes, I mean, something like that.
And thank you very much. And first of all, before I go to my presentation, and I would like to provide my appreciation and to the distinguished delegates and also the IGAD team that has invested their efforts and time to mobilize such an important meeting. And this kind of meeting does not only help us to, you can't hear me, so I have to shout. Yes, can you hear me now? Yes, thank you very much. And I just want to start, before I go to my presentation, to provide an appreciation to distinguished delegates and also IGAD team that has invested their efforts and mobilizing this kind of important meeting. And this kind of important meeting doesn't only help us, particularly Somalia, just to have a discussion and share our experience, but also it will help us to and remind us what we have done in the past and accomplished, and also remind us the commitments that we have made 3 years ago in terms of the Djibouti Declaration and also the call for action that was held in Addis Ababa. And also it will help us to plan ahead for the future, because as you all know, in Somalia we have key pressuring issues as a Minister of Education that falls on our plate from time to time that requires our quick response, and that causes sometimes to seduce us and push us away from those commitments that we have made. And so we thank you very much. So if I go directly to my presentation, I will start with a country snapshot to give you a brief information about the situation. When it comes to IDPs, returnees, and refugees, we have 3.77 million people of concern. That's a very, very huge number. And that out of that 3.77 million, IDPs is 2.97 million. While we have Somali refugees and asylum seekers that live abroad, that's 685,895, while Somali returnees are 92,348, and refugees and asylum seekers in Somalia is 28,284. If I try to go into, next slide, to go to the details of that sections and the categories I have presented, when it comes to the 28,284 refugees and asylum seekers, most of them, they originated from the countries Ethiopia, Yemen, and other nationalities. When we say other nationalities, we mean like Zanzibar and Syria and etc. When it comes to the 92,348 Somali refugee returnees, and when we look at the dates or the years that they came back to the country, and before 2017, we had 39,990, while from that year it started to decline, and this current year in 2021, we have 251 only. Because as returnees, as you know, it's always driven and it's motivated the situation of the politics and the security. And when it comes to the IDPs, the 2.97 million internal displaced people, and most of 54% are drought related. Well, you all know that drought now also is in play, where that number is expected to increase, and the conflict and insecurity is 30%, while flood and others are 15%. Next slide. And when we look back at how the numbers that we have supported, and Somalia holds 69,792 school-age children refugees and asylum seekers and returnees, where that 69,000, 10,740 are refugees and asylum seekers. And so for the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021, the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Higher Education, and NCRI, and with the support with its international partners, has provided support to 33,898 and refugees and asylum seekers, where 28,239 are returnees in IDPs and host students, and 5,659 are refugees and asylum seekers. Next slide. And the kind of support that we have provided, and always and has a base on our education sector strategic plan. And our education sector strategic plan that was developed in 2017 focused on 3 thematic areas. The first thematic area was governance, the second one was access, and the third one was equity. When we say governance, governance relates to building the institutions' capacities, drafting legal documents, policies, procedures, acts, and guidelines, and such. When it comes to the access and equity related to infrastructure development and providing learning materials that supports and school-age children to enroll and also give them an environment where they can be educated. Next slide. When it comes to the governance, what we have done so far accomplished, and the Ministry of Education, Culture and Higher Education has passed 14 acts, policies, guidelines, and legal documents that provided and facilitated the development and improving of the education internally. And all those policies provided an open door for all school-age children without differentiating them or dividing them into the origin of their countries. That means that we give them the same, the refugees and asylum seekers, school-age children were given the same rights that was given to the host community. And from there, the Ministry of Education started to reestablish public schools. As you all know, before 1990, and 100% schools and education was managed by the government. It was public and free, but after the collapse of the government, all that 100% public became private. So after our leadership from Somali government have decided to try to restore those public schools so we could provide free education to our population. So the last 2 or 3 years we have restored 25 public schools, recruited teachers, and also included those schools' expenditure and expense to the national budget so it can be run and the education to be continued. And this has given the opportunity for the refugees and asylum seekers and returnees to also join and enroll to those schools without asking them extra papers and also not charging them any fees. And also they sat with the national exams with the host community the same as their school-age children, and they were offered accredited secondary certificates. And also there was a program called Transitioning where the Ministry of Education started to shift the refugee and asylum seeker school-age children from private schools to the public schools. Next. And when it comes to the higher education, and the Somali federal government runs one public university called Somali National University, or Jama'at Ummadda, and also this university and also was implementing the same as what we were doing at the upper primary and lower primary and secondary, that was giving the same opportunity as those communities to refugees and returnees and school-age children. That is, they were not charged any extra fees. They were not asked extra papers while they graduated or evaluated for the certificates that they came when they were coming to the country. And also the Jama'at Ummadda, or the Somali National University, has given scholarship to 5 Yemeni refugees and admitted them freely as part of an inclusion policy. And also currently we're working on the education sector strategic plan that's going to be finalized in January 2022. And that strategic plan is going to continue or operate for the coming 4 years. And gradually now we're working including the refugees into the national education strategy that now is underhand, and also the statistical yearbook and the MS, so we could know what's going on, what is the information, the status and all. And also we have what we call a DAFI scholarship that's supported us by UNHCR with NCRI and the Ministry of Education. And from 2019 to 2021, 175 students were given scholarship based in Mogadishu, Hargeisa, Bosaso, and Baydhabo. Next. And when we come to the access and equity, and access and equity, and mostly we focused on and improving and or expanding classrooms, like constructing, rehabilitating 77 classrooms so far. We have also constructed 38 wash facilities, and also we have provided complete science laboratories to 5 schools. And also we have employed and supported 364 teachers with incentives, and as part of expansion of the CRRF. Also, we provided 15,108 learning materials such as books, prints, and desks. And also there was a small cash grants that was provided to 763 households with school-age children, so they can create their own income generation to continue and support their school-age children. Also, we built the capacity of 100 education committees, and also provided 802 hygiene and sanitary kits to refugees and returnees and community. Next. And the most challenging issue that we faced was COVID-19. That was the same issue or concerning issue with other neighboring countries. So we thought that we have to say something about it, how the Ministry of Education has also tried to counter it. And as you all know, the COVID-19, when it came to March 2020 in the country, and the government has decided and announced the closure of schools. And this closure of schools has caused or resulted to put out of school at least more than 500,000 of children. So also the impact of the COVID-19 was felt not only by the children, the school-age children, but also it was affected by the implementation of the programs that was running at that time, and also the implementing partners that was also supporting the Ministry of Education to fulfill its mandate. Next. So the strategies that we have adopted to make sure was, first of all, and the Ministry of Education has requested from the Somali federal government extra budget, where 2.4 million was supplementary budget was approved to respond to the COVID-19 challenge, and also with the support from the GPE, accelerated COVID-19 funding, we have developed what we call the distance learning platform, where a content for grade 1 to 8 online platform was developed, and also prepared the audio content for an offline platform. And currently, this year in 2021 as well, we are working on developing the secondary school as well, and the audio-visual content is ongoing. And the assessment that we have made during the closure, we have seen that 47% of those school age and of those more than 500,000 that were out of the school were accessing the distance learning to continue their education. And there was a challenge that we had experienced while implementing the distance learning, because distance learning online platform always requires what we called internet and electricity. So we have seen that in the rural areas and vulnerable communities, they cannot afford to procure such equipment or have an electricity and internet availability. So the Ministry of Education has came with a strategy by procuring 18,000 solar-powered radios with memory cards and distributing to these vulnerable communities. And the last and final strategy that we have adopted was we engaged and coordinated the implementing partners that were implementing different projects within the country, and requesting them to reprogram so they can upgrade or improve the sanitation of the schools, and also do an awareness raising in terms of COVID-19. So whenever the schools are reopened, the school-age children can just go to the schools and restart their education. And the most challenges that we have faced was, first of all, was limited of funds to implement initiatives. And the second challenge we faced was IDPs attracts more attention than refugees through prioritization process, because as you have seen, there's a large number of IDPs, and that number still is growing and increasing, because there's always drought that always hit in rural areas each and every year. And currently, we're affecting that drought is in play as well. And when it comes to security, so there was some areas that we couldn't access when it comes to our implementing partners and also the Ministry of Education. COVID-19 pandemic also slowed our physical intervention. That's one another challenge. And the other challenge was absence of children with special needs education program, because the current education programs were not applicable with special needs, education and children with special needs. The returnee education package also was limited to 1 calendar year, where parents are not able to provide school fees and students are in danger to drop out, to immigrate, joining extremists, or at risk to drug substances. So our recommendation and plan for the coming year in 2022 is, first of all, we want to prepare yearly cost planning for the implementation of the Djibouti Declaration, and that yearly cost planning to be included in our national budget approved by the Parliament. And also currently we're working on the education sector strategic plan. We're going to include the needs and the priorities and the activities for this refugee and asylum and returnees children and in that strategic plan as well. And also we are working on to include refugees and returnees school-age children into the multi-year and multi-partner projects like the Education Cannot Wait in GPE, that we expect those programs to start in 2022. And the other recommendation plan we have is, currently the education sector strategic plan is going to have 2 different layers. One layer is going to be the Somali member states, and the other layer is going to be the national one, that all those states' strategic plans are going to be assembled together. And we want to make sure that this member states' education sector plans is addressed or included the needs of the refugee and returnees. And the other one we have, the recommendation plan, is to strengthen the EMS data collection to include the needs of refugees and returnees as well, because our EMS data was created 2 years ago, and still the recording and uploading the data is still going on. So also we want to complete that process to make sure that we can get the information we require at the right time so we can respond quickly. And the other recommendation plan we have is we just don't want that this refugee and returnees response not only coordinated in this kind of platform in IGAD, but also to take it to the education coordination other platforms, such as the Somali Partnership Forum, where the Somali federal government engage with the different international partners, and also the education sector coordination platform that we held each and every month to address education issues. And the last one is provision of education opportunities for refugee children with special needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This is very interesting, as I noted as well. Interesting strategic plan for combating all these kind of things. And the small comment I want to make is about this, the accompanying problems of this pandemic and the issue of distance learning. I've always been one of those who thought the problem, is not always in a distance learning, and because distance learning comes with its own problems. So.
the best. I just the three countries, and I want to talk about the inclusivity. In Kenya, they say they are inclusive, but I have a question which I would like them to answer. We had a lot of refugees who went to Kenya. Some of them started in primary 5 and primary 4, and they were faced with the issue of Kiswahili. What I know very well, because I was in Kenya for 6 years, they didn't have any accelerated learning for those refugees. And when they came to sit for the primary 8 exam, they performed badly. And that was added to the grade which they were getting to go to the secondary school. So most of the students could not go to the schools they wanted to go because of Kiswahili. That, to me, unless the system has changed, this was not very inclusive. Why I'm saying this, because I studied in Khartoum University, in Khartoum, in the secondary school, but when we moved from the south to the north, we were given a special Arabic because of our background, and that made us to compete to go to Khartoum University. So also in Uganda, we had students who went to Uganda in the 60s, and they performed extremely well because they have no language barrier there. They were not subjected to any of the languages in Uganda. And so most of them went to Makerere, but I don't remember very well whether we actually had students from South Sudan during my time, that was in the 80s when I taught in Nairobi University, who actually went to Nairobi University simply because of that lack of inclusivity at that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor, for this lengthy comment. No question, right? Okay. Someone on this side, trying to be fair. Yes? Please, if you want to comment, make a comment, please make it short. If you want to ask a question, please go direct to the question.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have a very limited time left.
Thank you very much, sir. I want to thank the presenters very much. I support the sentiments that had been expressed by our presenter from Kenya. If I go to what the questionnaire asked, the professor asked, we know from our presentation from Kenya that one of the challenges that we are facing is in terms of language. Language is not very, very easy. Even in Djibouti here, sometimes we talk in sign language because you can't get French, you can't get Arabic, etc. So it is a challenge we must accept. But what is crucial is that if you look at our legal and policy framework in Kenya, one of the most important ingredients is that the country has the Kenya National Qualifications Framework Act number 22 of 2014. In this framework and the attendant regulations of 2018, it indicates all levels, all qualifications. We have 10 levels, and there's recognition of prior learning. So we try as much as possible to cater for the interests of all groups of people. So if you are in a particular level, it will be very, very easy, at least to know where to place you. We know that there are issues here and there in terms of implementation, but that is very, very crucial. And also what I would say is that the refugees and other asylum seekers, Kenya has also entered into partnership with some bodies, like we have Cambridge International College, Britain, that has partnered with the Human Resource Management College to offer distance learning programs in management-related areas. and refugees and asylum seekers have been benefiting from the same. Even much more crucial, Mr. Chairman, Kenya has one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. Constitution of Kenya 2010, if you Google even now and you compare with others in the world, you will believe me, it is one of the most progressive. And it protects the rights of all people. We consider refugees and asylum seekers as human beings. They have to be protected. Not that they are superhuman beings, but they are human beings like us Kenyans, like any other person in the world. They have to be protected. Their fundamental, basic, inalienable human right has to be protected at all costs, with their freedom of association, speech, and all those particular elements. So, Mr. Chairman, you will believe us that we are trying what we can as Kenyans so that we support this particular program. I support IGAD. IGAD has done a lot for the country, for the world. IGAD started from zero, now IGAD has really moved, and I know in some years coming, IGAD will be one of the states in Africa. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make a few interventions in regard to what is discussed on the side of Kenya.
Who is up?
I'm Luke, that is Mike from Foreign Affairs of South Sudan. The matter is very concerned, it is very attractive. I'm part of the person who benefit from education in Kenya, because I was a refugee in Kakuma, and I moved up to Nairobi. I know how Kenya is delivering services to our refugees. Yes, the only problem was the Kiswahili, and that was during our time. But as per now, our refugees, students are performing better than Kenyan, because they are born in Kenya, and they use Kiswahili as simple as a language that they spoke everywhere they go. So in the region, to me, I prepare the system of education in Kenya is better. I read my part of my education in Uganda. I did my basic education in Kenya, and I did my highest education in Uganda, and I compare all of them. Back to our system in South Sudan, we suggested our system should be interrelated with that of Kenya, because we assume the Kenyan curriculums and the system of education is the best in the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm coming back to, are you still interested? No? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm coming for the second time. My name is Balai, and I'm from Addis Ababa University. As it was commented by one of the speakers, I really liked all the three presentations, excellent. Except that I would have loved, by the way, we are here to see how the Djibouti Declaration is put into effect in the last 4 years. So I would have loved if the presentations are very well aligned with those 5 core issues. It's actually a comment for the remaining presenters. We can easily comprehend what is being done and how nice our performances are if they are properly aligned with those 5 core issues. Having said this, I have a question for all the presenters. This issue of, I'm coming with this issue of inclusion for the second time. Dr. Kabada has nicely explained how inclusion is being conceptualized and how it is planned to be put into effect. But I just want to hear what are the kinds of measures you took to implement this inclusion? What is exactly that you included in the implementation process? I mean, in terms of the policy, curriculum, and all that. So I wish you put some remarks on this.
So you are asking them all. This is one question for all.
Yeah, that's a comment for all. I have one question for Ethiopia. Perhaps it may apply for all. I appreciate Johannes for being honest. Our leaders are becoming honest in terms of admitting the kind of problems we have in this country. 90% of Ethiopian schools are substandard. This is a very sad news, but I appreciate the honesty. And honestly, this is a similar problem across the region. The only thing is Ethiopia is being honest in admitting this problem. So do you think we are ready for inclusion? Don't you think we need to first work on improving quality before we claim for inclusion? So I'm asking how far Ethiopia is ready for inclusion under this worrisome situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you a lot. I think let us have response. Yeah, this gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presenters and in the member countries for the presentation on the Djibouti Declaration and achievements so far, also being on target, especially in telling that challenges we're facing as member countries. We have done our presentation as Ethiopia, and we have presented our challenges as well. We have presented the enrollment of refugees and returnees in primary, secondary education, and somehow we've missed issue related to higher education. We have quite a good number of refugees and returnees being admitted into higher education system as well. As we've heard this morning, education cannot wait. Yeah, it's true that we have a challenge with standards in schools, and some of our schools don't meet the requirements and the criteria. We have 4 categories of class standards, and the 90% is the ones that have failed to meet the best, the 4th category, but we still have quite a good number of schools, including international schools, community schools, and private run schools, and schools being run by development associations which normally address the cream and the best students. We cannot wait for education, so we have to do 2 things at a time, simultaneously. We have to include refugees and returnees, and at the same time work on improving our school standards. That's how we normally approach our challenges as a country and as a government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we need to have one lady there, just one comment or question, and then we will have Professor Kabede to wrap up, and then we have a break.
I just want to comment about the language barrier and the bad result which the children are displaying. That's not a news for any refugees living anywhere in this planet. Those who are refugees in the Western countries encountered exactly the same. But from the beginning, from the planning of the education time, everybody knows that these children do not speak Somali or Amharic or Swahili, so you have to have in the planning extra teachers which could teach extra time to those children until they come to the same level as the host community children. So that is something we have to, from the beginning, in the planning, not after five years when we see the children are producing a very bad result. That's one. The other one is comment is the distance learning. I think, of course, it is not the same as good as when we have the teacher in our classrooms, but it is better than nothing. Even if we can maybe do not teach properly at that time, it will help the children not to forget what's called school year or school time. That's the two comments I just want to add what the speaker said. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think, Professor?
Chair, we need to respond also.
Okay.
Chair,
Yeah.
we need to respond to the...
Yeah. Sure. Please respond. Yes. Yeah.
So thank you, Chair. As a way of responding to the questions, I think I'm from Kenya. I think they were mainly from South Sudan. I think the first one was a commendation. I think you thanked us for having a good system, very good curriculum in the region. We thank you for that. Two, you talked about barriers caused by Kiswahili language, and I think adding to what my colleague had already put across, in our system, Kiswahili language is compulsory. Is a compulsory subject, within our systems. And I think that is what causes that problem, so that when South Sudan students come, then they have problems with that Kiswahili because it is one of the subjects you can't do without in our examinations. So because of that arrangement, that's why we are also coming up with the accelerated learning programs. And of course, I said in my presentation that we are working on accelerated learning guidelines, within which there are those catch-ups, within which there are also remediation programs, and I'm sure that within that particular document, we should be able to assist these refugees going forward. Otherwise, thank you very much for the compliments. The other one was from, I think, Professor, I don't know from which country? Huh? Oh, yes. He was saying which measures are we putting in place to ensure inclusion. We are saying for us in Kenya, we say that for this inclusion to really have a strong base and really to be well anchored into our systems, we have to go to our legal framework. And just like in my presentation, both our Constitution and the Basic Education Act, no problem. It allows room for this. Then we move down to our policy framework. And you remember I talked about our sessional paper, which is our long-term policy framework. Again, it speaks about inclusion. And then, of course, I was ending it up to the specific policy on inclusion, which we are working on. So for us, we wanted to start from there. But of course, as we went on, this program requires both governance, and of course it also requires resources. And I did say that we had to speak to the donors, because we didn't want just to assume that they will support us as government when we get into inclusion. And I told you that when we took them through our costed plan and also our policy framework, they said, yes, this is a good thing, and they are ready to help us fundraise. So coupled with all the other structural programs that we are doing, including the Refugee Act, which I've talked about, the CRRF for Kenya, which I've talked about, and all those other documents, I think we're moving towards actualizing this particular process. Otherwise, thank you very much. Of course, again, for my colleagues, I think you also said that it's a question for all. For Ethiopia, I think my brother from Ethiopia answered you. But we can say with inclusion, we are saying we are including refugees into national systems. So where national systems are is where they fit. You see, whether they are low or high or whatever, we'll still be practicing what? Inclusion, because wherever they are, then that is inclusion. That is what we are talking about. So that as you strengthen your systems, even these refugees also benefit as you move on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Actually, inclusion is not always the best. I mean, let us put it this way. You include, there are always shortcomings because the students have their own priorities, and then you are educating them for the future, for wherever they go. So it's not always a plus. There are always minuses. So let us take that into account whenever we talk about inclusion. Thank you. I think, Professor, you comment. comments.
Thank you, Prof. I think I don't go into all the details. I think all the reflections are very critical, very constructive, so I'll take it as that. For us also as the Secretariat, we take note of the key issues that are being raised, so that it will help us refine our approach and then work with our members. Well, I think the question of inclusion is coming, and it is for a valid reason, that it is one of the most important areas of focus for the Djibouti Declaration, for IGAD, and for our partners. And I'll say this with regard to inclusion. We think of inclusion at policy level, because I think that Kenya has rightly pointed out the policies and the strategies are very important, and the legal frameworks. And then we talk of inclusion at program level. At the different education programs or subsectors, we talk of inclusion. If we don't talk about including every student, every child from pre-primary, early child to university level, then we are not successful in our inclusion. And then inclusion also takes us to the school level. Well, the different schools, the different programs, the rural areas, urban refugees, rural. I think we have to think in terms of how to embed all this into the inclusion agenda, and then at community level. What are the, for example, the situations that are either facilitative or preventive of inclusion? Do students feel belonging to a community? Yes, or do these psychosocial barriers still impact? Even if you put students in a school environment, in a classroom environment, do we still achieve our goal of bringing people together? Ultimately, that is our objective, to bring people together and then actually set the context for everyone to live comfortably. So I think we have to see the dimension of inclusion from a very broader perspective, but zoom down to the, when it comes to student counting, you have to capture the number of students that are included in your school in the MIS. Whether you call it MIS or NEMIS or REMIS, we have to capture that and show that by talking what we talk, we have also done the job, the actual job itself. But I think it is a lot of things for a lot of us, but I think a very important topic for reflection again and again. Thank you, Prof. And I think as with your kind permission, I think we are winding up this session. The next session will be coffee, and then after coffee we come back. Your Excellency will be excused. We'll a couple of presentations. So then we'll use our time efficiently, and then we'll go. Thank you.
Please, can I just mention something? Thought is really very important. I don't know whether definitely people thought of it. I mean, you mentioned something very interesting about policy issues, and the gentleman from Kenya, he mentioned that. I mentioned something that inclusion is not always the best that could happen. What I meant is that, as you rightly pointed, that you come, you get yourself included in the system that you find it there. It might serve your purpose, it might not serve your purpose. I thought the philosophy behind this is to avoid segregation and discrimination. Educational segregation and educational discrimination. And for that purpose, you'll be included in whatever that you find in there. You find the food that's available for you to eat. I thought this is what the idea about inclusion for when we talk about the Djibouti declaration. Thank you so much. And whatever you mentioned, we do it now. We break for coffee, and then half an hour, you come back, inshallah. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, take care.
exist and do.
our meeting by Professor Ding, Robert Ding, from University of Juba, the Vice President and one of the board members of the IGAD Council of Higher Education. Professor, most welcome on this table, and then we will be happy to be guided by you in the next 1 hour or so of the session. The green one. This good.
Oh, this one.
So we have 4 countries. We'll see how many of them will be.
Okay. Good.
Djibouti will come.
Yeah.
First will be Djibouti.
Yeah, and then there is this
South Sudan.
Sudan and Uganda.
Whichever is ready.
Okay. Welcome back. We're supposed to be there for 30 minutes, but we added Google African time. Nevertheless, I think we're going to be here up to 7 o'clock. Now, the next session is a member states report. We have already had some 3 wonderful reports from 3 countries, and we still have about 4 countries to give their reports. And the first one is the host country, if they are ready, but I thought they said they were going to be ready by tomorrow. Does that one still hold? Djibouti, are you coming to give now or tomorrow?
Today.
Okay, excellent. So the floor is yours, please. Yes, go ahead, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bonjour à tout le monde. Je m'excuse parce que j'étais censée faire ma présentation demain matin, mais comme je suis un peu engagée demain très tôt à une autre réunion, j'ai demandé à M. Kebede s'il était possible d'avancer la présentation aujourd'hui. Donc,
Excuse me, Marwa, do we have interpretation service? Yeah, tell us please which channel. Okay, sorry, Marwa, thank you. Channel 2.
d'accord. Donc ma présentation concernera l'état d'avancement de la mise en œuvre de la déclaration de Djibouti. Avant d'aller dans les détails, je voudrais d'abord vous donner un aperçu de la situation. Donc comme vous le savez déjà, Djibouti a une politique de porte ouverte aux réfugiés qui, depuis son accès à l'indépendance, accueille ces réfugiés dans 3 villages de réfugiés qui sont Al-Adé, Markazi et Holhol. Donc, selon les dernières statistiques, nous avons à peu près 34 463 réfugiés et demandeurs d'asile qui sont enregistrés dans le camp. Parmi ces effectifs, nous avons 12 046 élèves en âge d'être à l'école qui sont recensés. Donc, pour l'année scolaire 21-22, nous avons 4 741 élèves, soit 40% de ces élèves-là qui ont principalement le statut de réfugiés, qui sont inscrits dans les écoles de ces 3 villages. Nous avons 12 écoles réparties sur les 3 ordres d'enseignement, c'est-à-dire le pré-primaire, le fondamental et le lycée. Ces élèves-là poursuivent des programmes, plutôt 3 programmes d'enseignement différents. Donc pour les écoles de la région d'Ali-Sabié, nous avons 2 programmes en cours. Le premier programme, c'est un programme d'enseignement national qui a commencé, dont la mise en œuvre a commencé en 2017. Et le second est un programme de transition kenyan. Il s'agit d'un programme, d'un curriculum que nous avons hérité de l'agence qui s'occupait de l'éducation à l'époque, la Lutheran World Federation. En termes de statistiques, nous avons pour cette année-là, pour cette année 2021-22, l'année scolaire 21-22, 8% d'élèves qui sont au pré-primaire, 55% d'entre eux sont au niveau du primaire, 27% dans l'enseignement moyen, et pour l'enseignement secondaire, nous avons 6%. Je me rappelle, plus tôt, le représentant du HR avait mentionné que ces effectifs-là diminuaient du primaire jusqu'au secondaire. C'est ce que vous remarquerez dans les statistiques en bas. Donc, je rappelle aussi les principaux engagements de la déclaration de Djibouti qui étaient en nombre de 5. Le principal engagement, l'insertion des réfugiés et les demandeurs d'asile dans le système éducatif national, l'accès à l'enseignement supérieur, à l'enseignement technique et la formation professionnelle, la mise en place d'un cadre régional de qualification, l'accréditation et la certification des programmes éducatifs nationaux et le renforcement des capacités. Tous ces éléments-là avaient pour objectif principal de donner un accès à tout enfant réfugié résidant sur le sol national, une éducation de qualité sans aucune discrimination. Et ceci est reflété dans l'article 5 de la loi de 2017 qui donne de nombreux droits aux réfugiés. En termes d'intégration dans le système éducatif, dès le début de ce processus, en 2017, le ministère a intégré quelques actions en vue de concrétiser cette intégration. Il s'agissait pour un début de traduire le contenu d'enseignement en anglais. J'aimerais un peu détailler ce point-là. Il y a eu une réunion de concertation à l'époque avec les réfugiés. Les réfugiés vivant dans les villages d'Al-Adé et Hol, plutôt les parents, ont sollicité un programme d'enseignement en anglais. Ceci contrevenait au programme d'enseignement disponible à Djibouti qui était le français. Donc nous avons priorisé leurs sollicitations. Les programmes d'enseignement ont été traduits de façon progressive. En 2021-22, cette année scolaire, nous sommes en train d'implémenter 2 niveaux d'enseignement, c'est-à-dire la classe de la 4e année et la 5e année, et plutôt la 8e année. C'est-à-dire que de la 1re à la 8e année, les élèves réfugiés poursuivent un programme d'enseignement djiboutien traduit en langue anglaise. D'autant plus que nous sommes aussi alignés sur les politiques du ministère, à savoir doter à chaque élève réfugié un livre. En termes de formation des enseignants, les formations sont dispensées dans les centres de formation de l'enseignement fondamental au CFF, mais aussi sur les sites eux-mêmes. Ceci dans le but d'augmenter, ou plutôt de rehausser la qualité de l'enseignement. Le ministère s'est engagé au tout début de la réforme, au tout début de l'intégration jusqu'à aujourd'hui, à mettre en norme les standards des infrastructures. C'est-à-dire que les élèves qui travaillent, qui étudient dans les écoles des réfugiés, disposent des mêmes équipements. L'accès à l'électricité et au solaire, à l'eau et à l'Internet, chaque élève reçoit au début de chaque année scolaire des uniformes, 2 tenues pour chaque élève et les kits d'enseignement nécessaires à l'apprentissage. En termes de perspective d'intégration, le ministère de l'Éducation nationale travaille cette année à l'élaboration du futur schéma directeur 2020-2035, en alignement avec le plan national de développement, la vision 2035. Donc les réfugiés seront pleinement intégrés avec toutes les horizons, c'est-à-dire que toutes ces thématiques-là que nous avons citées en haut ne sont que les priorités, mais nous essaierons de doter ou de fournir tous les éléments nécessaires pour que ces élèves puissent avoir une éducation de qualité. Next. En termes d'enseignement, de l'accès à l'enseignement supérieur, comme je l'ai dit plus tôt, les élèves de Al-Adé et de Holhol poursuivaient un programme d'enseignement kényan. Comme la Swahili et l'éducation religieuse constituaient une matière obligatoire, le ministère de l'Éducation nationale a décidé de promulguer un décret qui permettait à ces élèves d'accéder à un certificat reconnu pour qu'ils puissent accéder à l'université. Pour la session 2020, nous avons 21 élèves de IGAD qui ont pu obtenir ce diplôme-là. Très peu d'entre eux, 4, continuent toujours leurs études. Certains ont été éliminés pour des critères d'âge, parce que cette année-là, c'était la première promotion, et cette promotion regroupait les élèves de différentes années scolaires, de 3 années scolaires précédentes. Bien heureusement, l'année 2021-2022, nous avons un résultat qui est nettement supérieur. Sur les 37 élèves inscrits au certificat de fin d'études secondaires, 27 d'entre eux ont réussi et sont inscrits à l'université. En termes de formation professionnelle, le ministère de l'Éducation nationale propose des formations de courte durée aux jeunes déscolarisés en collaboration avec les partenaires dans le cadre du programme de livelihood, où il s'agit de donner aux jeunes réfugiés en dehors des écoles des capacités, des compétences professionnelles afin de s'insérer dans le marché du travail. En termes de... Next. Par rapport à l'impact du Covid-19, pour les réfugiés, ça a été une expérience assez rude parce que les moyens disponibles au niveau de ces villages de réfugiés, dans ces écoles la plus particulièrement, étaient moindres comparés aux écoles nationales. Parce que déjà en termes de distance, ils sont très éloignés, donc ils ont très peu accès à Internet et au réseau national pour ce qui est de la télévision. Dans les villages de réfugiés, il n'y a pas d'accès à la télévision ni Internet. Pour cela, nous avons privilégié l'élaboration de livrets d'accompagnement pour les élèves de la 4e année jusqu'à la 12e année. Donc quelques 4000 exemplaires ont pu être distribués. Un programme d'accompagnement personnalisé pour les élèves de la 1re, 2e année ont été également mis en place. Et à la reprise de l'année scolaire 2021, nous avons mis en place des programmes de rattrapage de cours intensifs afin de rattraper les pertes au niveau des apprentissages. Aussi, nous avons mis en place une formation de 4 semaines à l'ensemble des enseignants réfugiés qui étaient 193 afin de leur donner la capacité de s'adapter, ou plutôt, c'était plutôt des formations d'introduction parce que les enseignants réfugiés ne maîtrisent pas ou très peu l'Internet. Les défis sont nombreux et énumérés quelques-uns. La première, c'est la barrière de la langue. Certains collègues avaient cité plutôt que les réfugiés, les élèves réfugiés sont obligés d'apprendre dans une langue qui est différente de leur langue naturelle. Et ce qui constitue plutôt pour eux une barrière. Et ce que nous rencontrons est complètement différent. Le programme d'enseignement est certes traduit en anglais, mais toute la partie inspection et encadrement pédagogique nécessite la capacité de maîtrise de la langue anglaise, chose que les inspecteurs ou les encadreurs pédagogiques ne disposent pas. Donc en termes d'encadrement, nous avons ces gaps-là. Et au niveau des standards, des infrastructures, le travail a certes été réalisé, mais le gap reste énorme. Il va falloir s'aligner sur la politique du ministère en termes d'effectifs élèves par salle de classe, qui est de 45. Il va falloir éliminer le double flux. Il va aussi falloir mettre en place des programmes de cantine et de santé scolaire. quand on parle de qualité, on oublie très souvent l'enseignant. C'est l'enseignant qui reste au centre de la qualité de l'enseignement qui est prodigué. Et avec les villages de réfugiés, un des défis que nous avons rencontrés, c'est que ces enseignants-là ne prennent pas un salaire qui convient au travail qu'ils fournissent. Une prime de motivation est octroyée par le HR. Ces primes-là équivaut à plus ou moins un quart du salaire d'un fonctionnaire djiboutien. Il est difficile de les évaluer à la fin sur la base du travail fourni, puisqu'on ne motive pas suffisamment ces enseignants-là. Ce point-là faisait partie de l'engagement de Djibouti lors du Forum mondial sur le réfugié, où il était question d'intégrer ces enseignants de façon progressive dans la convention collective. Et faute de moyens financiers, ces enseignants n'ont toujours pas bénéficié de mise à niveau de leur salaire. Et il s'agit d'un objectif qui reste toujours à réaliser. Aussi, en termes de programme d'enseignement, j'aimerais aussi rappeler que pour le village de Markazi, c'est un village qui a été ouvert en 2015 avec l'arrivée des réfugiés du Yémen. Les parents et les élèves ont souhaité continuer leur apprentissage dans un curriculum en arabe qui vient du Yémen. Ces programmes-là est en train de perdre son essence dans le sens où le Yémen, la situation du Yémen ne fait que se dégrader. Djibouti a décidé de la même façon que pour la traduction du programme national en anglais, de traduire l'ensemble des manuels en arabe. C'est un processus qui n'a pas encore commencé et qui, je suppose, prendra aussi un certain temps. Donc, il s'agit d'un défi à soulever. Pour ce qui est de l'enseignement supérieur, les élèves qui finissent leur programme d'enseignement secondaire dans les villages d'Al-Adé et de Markazi souhaitent continuer leurs études, la majeure partie d'entre eux. Mais ces élèves-là rencontrent un défi majeur qui constitue l'absence d'un accompagnement. Et je vais clôturer par ce point-là et vous souhaite, Inch'Allah, une bonne continuation.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I got it through the translation because my French is not there. But I could get a lot of information from the translator, I think, which was quite good. One of the things which I want to mention was this effort of translating from French to English, and also from Arabic language, or from French to Arabic language. I think this is commendable, because really you are trying to really make sure that these kids are learning, okay? Because the first language is the language you think of, not the language you learn. So if those kids are coming from Yemen, the first language is English, and that is the language they're actually thinking of. So that is a wonderful thing. Now the next speaker, according to our schedule, is South Sudan. South Sudan. So if you are ready, please you can take up your position and give us your report. Thank you. Just to remind you again, you are given 20 minutes. Okay? Thank you. And the other two countries which are remaining, are Sudan. No, I think Uganda has already presented, huh? No? Okay, so you get ready. Sudan and Uganda. Thank you.
Because of time, I will say protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The one talking is David Lawela Ladu Modi from Ministry of General Education and Instruction, Republic of South Sudan, Director General for Basic and Secondary Education. We are a delegate from South Sudan, we have 8. And then from different institutions. Coming to implementation of Djibouti Declaration, all those activities outlined, we have, as a South Sudanese, we have done. Not, even though it's not complete, but we have done regional education quality standard, regional skill development for refugees, inclusion of refugees education in national education system, accreditation and certification of education program, financing, partnership and monitoring, development and implementation of course action plan. These are the targeted population group in South Sudan according to Djibouti declarations. These are the targeted group. We have their children, youth, then we have adults, and this one including displaced, refugees, and returnees in our country. Refugees in South Sudan. It is S, you add S there, refugees, not refugee, refugees in South Sudan. You put S, please, because your document. No. Yeah. The key figure for refugees in South Sudan, 329,406. Asylum seekers, 4,288. And then those who are in camp, 98%, and then 2% who are in urban areas. We have spontaneous refugee returnees, South Sudanese, who are coming from neighboring countries. If you see the map of South Sudan, the big cycle is Central Equatorial State, that is Juba, where it's got a big number of returnees, especially in October, 60,820. If you go to Unity State, 79,245. You go to Upper Nile, 63,000. You come to Eastern Equatoria, we have Then we come to Jungule, 28,000. Western Baragazal, Western Equatoria, 11,500. And then Warab, and then followed by Northern Baragazals. And then the population of refugee returnees is 387,000. Most of these refugees returnees, most of them are coming from Sudan and Uganda, plus other neighboring countries. Internal displaced persons is 1.7 million internally displaced. And then because of floods and then insecurity, the number increases to, if you see the conflicts and violence which erupted in South Sudan after December 2013, increased the number of IDPs to 1.71 million people as of October 2021. This is because of the flood in the country. Now, number of displaced per state. The percentage is given there, and then the figure is given there according to the states. Number of IDPs by location type, displacement sites, that is in POC. And then if we come down to the big circle here, 1,240,920, which is 79% IDPs in host communities. When we talk of host communities, after returning from neighboring countries, they have gone to all the other estates, and then they do estate there. As it is noted, 2.2 million South Sudanese are refugees in neighboring countries, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. As you have seen, these are the refugees, returnees of South Sudan who have come to South Sudan. Implementation status of Djibouti declarations. We have developed a validated framework, qualification framework, which by then it was not done, but it's now we have done it. National TV curriculum, policy, and qualification framework was developed and launched to facilitate the skill development for refugees and other population groups. Because of time, I'm supposed to explain, but I've given 20 minutes. Refugees education data captured in the national aims for inclusion of in national education sector plan. Now the whole country is doing educational census. Develop and implement educational national cost action plan. Integration of refugees in national COVID-19 response in education. Develop and operationalize girls' education strategies to improve girls' enrollment. Deliver distance learning through national radio broadcasts like SSBC, that is South Sudan Broadcasting Corporation, and support community radios to broadcast lessons that cover rural areas and some refugee camps. We have community radios, and then this program actually has succeeded in the country. Orientations of refugees teachers on the new curriculum, education curriculum. Our new national curriculum, people has been trained, teachers has been trained all over the country, including refugees teachers all over the country. Inclusion of refugees schools in the case transfer and capitation grant scheme. This is done. No any discrimination completely, because even including private schools, programs they are given. Inclusion of refugee schools in the new textbook distribution list. There are also no any other school in the whole country. The new curriculum textbooks are distributed all over the country. Now, partners and agencies working on education for refugees, returnees, and host communities. We have, these are the partners and the agencies. Number one, we have Lutheran World Federation is implementing primary education program in Maban and Jamjan. World Vision International implementing education program for refugees in Yambio. Across is implementing comprehensive education program for refugees in Garam and Juba, urban. Jesuit Refugees Services implementing teachers training program for refugees in Maban. Danish Refugees Council is supporting the construction of classroom in Maban refugees camp. Action Africa Health International is supporting the construction of schools and classroom for refugees in Zamzant. Save the Children, coordinating education in emergency, in education in emergency, in so many programs. Save the Children. UN agencies, UNHCR, UNICEF, UNESCO, and World Food. NRC, Norwegian Refugees Council, supporting IDPs affected by conflicts by constructing temporary learning spaces. Lessons learned from the process of implementation. The national MI's capacity is limited and require enhancement. We need resources. Lack of awareness among different refugees and host community on the Djibouti declarations. This one need also support so that we express this policy of Djibouti declaration all over the country. Limited resources, capacity on the ministry to facilitate the inclusion of refugees. We have issue of mobility and so on and so on. Lack of coordination between this one, we are coordinating well. I don't know why this one is there. We are coordinating well with all our partners and our donors. Slow implementation of national cost plan for refugees in IDPs, returnees, and host community. We come to challenges encountered and opportunities. Lack of hardware to implement connected education during school closure due to COVID-19 pandemic. Insecurity and flood in some parts of the country. School dropout due to forced or early marriages, teenage pregnancy, child labor, and economic hardship. These are one of the problems, one of the challenges that we facing us in the country. Constraints in the implementation of COVID-19 education guidelines, special needs, and other educational materials to facilitate quality learning. In this COVID-19 needs a lot of things to combat this enemy. Inadequately equipped EDC centers, that is early childhood development. Overcrowding of learners in the classes due to lack of infrastructures. Negative attitude towards TVS by the community. But now due to Djibouti declaration, it's coming to a sense. You see, like myself, I'm sending my children into academic school so that they become doctors, they become what, and politicians, what. But if you're sending your child to Tibet, Malato, that is a fail, yes, you are destroying your child. But now, for a country to develop, Tibet is the only way in the country. So, South Sudan, the country has taken it up, so there will be no any problem. Difficulties in transition of refugees community into the new competent-based curriculum. Why there's difficulties in refugees community? Because some of them are coming from countries which are not learning English, and they are facing problem. That is why we said there's difficulties in transition of low remuneration to teachers in refugees, ITPs, returnees, and host communities. Low political will in terms of mobilization of resources. Language barrier among teachers and learners in refugees, IDPs, returnees, and host community. Some of them are from non-English speaking countries. We have them. Now, for example, we have our representative teacher, refugees from Congo. They are learning French there. But when they come to South Sudan, they are given intensive English course. And then after this, they are course. And you see, I think he represent refugees in this occasion. How do you think of him? He's able to speak English. Yes. Yes. So even students, now they don't have any problem of English. Lack of trained teachers for early childhood education development in refugees, IDPs, returnees, and host communities. I'm asking this August House, and since morning up to now, many many people are talking of this ECD. To have a standard education in IGAD, we have to start our education with small kids. They need to be brought up properly. Going to primary, that is a different thing altogether. Unless they are brought up in ECD. Going to primary, to the university, they will go without any difficulties. But ECD, in most of our countries, people are not caring. That is why we have, I've been hearing here that there are some problems in some of the country. The standard is not good. It's because of this. These refugees girls online studies. Now, as people have been saying inclusion, South Sudan has made inclusion. Earlier, we have all very few schools who are only refugees alone. But most of the schools were mixed up with what? With all the refugee students all over the country. 3/4, only few schools. You find that purely they are refugees, especially in camps and other places. Otherwise, all over the country. You see performance of refugee students in senior 4 exam, 2020 and 2021. These are 2 countries. We are giving as an example. Congo and Sudan. And if you see the one who has scored high marks in Congo, ladies. And if you see in Sudan, those who score high marks, also girls. We will let us clap our hands to this achievement, Djibouti Declaration. So, these are the issues. We have to encourage no any discrimination for our refugees in all our countries. We have to bring them together, teach them together with the host communities, and then definitely they will even do better, as you have seen here. Congested primary schools in Mabani. This is what is happening in a country. Classes are not enough. So we are appealing to IGAD to intervene with this case. You see, to reduce everything, this trauma and then healing needs extracurricular activities. All the activities, outside the activities, not always class, no. They have to be brought out and they do something. These are secondary school. Observations. Education conditions at refugees and returnees and host community will simultaneously improve. Here, we are here because of that. And if you go from here, all these dignitaries to our respective countries, the education of refugees, IDPs, and it will not be the same as in the past years. There will be something different. If we are coming here, we will say something different. As we are saying today, it will be different. We will simultaneously improve. National Education Cost Plan implementation is at very low rate due to lack of funds and COVID-19. I don't know in other countries, but in our country, this is the cost. This is what we have observed as South Sudanese. There is need to engage the government stakeholders to expedite the commitment in supporting the plan. This is very significant. Now, for full implementation of what we have seen in the sixth one, we have, as the country, we are divided into short-term step, mid-term step, and long-term step. This is what we are in short-term. We will start with construction of host facilities at the refugees, returnees, and host community states. COVID-19 awareness and refugees, returnees, and host communities. This is short-term. Construction of temporary learning is phased to reduce overcrowding in the classes and maintaining COVID-19 protocol. Intensive English courses for teachers from non-English speaking countries. Like, for example, we have very many teachers in South Sudan who are Arabic speaking, they don't know English completely. So we are planning to give the intensive English course for 1 year. Creation of peace clubs in the schools to expedite peace reconciliation among the hostile communities. I think you know our country, but we're trying hard. Our young ones need to be, something need to be done. We need to, in schools, peace clubs for peace reconciliation, and so that this one, there will be no any problem in the country. Provision of dignity kits for schools, girls, and refugees, returnees, and school communities. These are very important, you see, especially for girls. If they are not associated, they will drop out from the schools. We come to midterm steps. Intensive English courses for teachers from non-English speaking countries, creation of refugees data in EMIS to ensure effective monitoring of quality learning and teaching at refugees and returnees community. Establish adult literacy education learning centers. This is very important. To accommodate the dropout both primary and secondary learners. Vocational life skill training to reduce unemployment rate among the community. If these debates in each every country of IGAD, they stress too much on Tibet, you will not have any economic crisis. Provisions of agricultural tools to the community to support their food security and livelihood. Long term, reconstruction of destroyed permanent infrastructure destroyed during conflict before returnees can move back to their indigenous lands. Construction of new permanent schools in areas without schools. In South Sudan, we have so many areas which have got no primary, no secondary. It's really a problem. Training of ECD teachers at refugees, returnees, and host community. For us to have a good education in our countries, we need to do so. Yeah. I think I'm a teacher talking very loud. Yeah. Continuous provisions of scholarship opportunities to well-performing students to higher education. Because if we give all our refugees from primary to secondary and then they did well, like the example that you have seen, they need to go. And this is in the plan because somebody said something very important regarding education of refugees in higher educations. Establish recreational centers and facilities for social cohesion and trauma healing. Sincerely, absolutely, South Sudan acknowledge IGAD, Ministry of Education, Republic of Djibouti. South Sudan acknowledge UNHCR and all partners and donors. South Sudan acknowledge all of you who are coming to this August house. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we are going to have a change of the program. And that means the other two reports are not going to be given today. We will start with them tomorrow morning. And so we are going to request or ask you to make some comments about the last two presentations. Comments from the last two presentations. And maybe I can start by saying it was only one presentation that the costed national plan of action was given in figures. And I think that is important because we cannot just ask IGAD to help. We need to quantify the kind of help we need. So put that one into figures. And then when you go back, you present your proposal to them. The other thing which I would like also to mention is the presentation by the Djibouti representative. Access to higher education, where they were adopting Kenyan curriculum. I think this is already a part of integration of education in our region. Because once the country begin to recognize the curriculum in another country so that it can facilitate the going to that country, I think that is excellent and it's really a good step. The village of Markazi, the work you're also doing, where you are translating pamphlets from primary 1 to primary 8 to English or vice versa, I think is also excellent. This shows the inclusion that has been talking about. Because if you move to either a French-speaking country or an English-speaking country, then they will have no problem there. So that is a wonderful move also. And I think I'll ask my friend to see anybody with a comment or a question, you're welcome. Yes, Professor Joshua.
Thank you very much. Mine is a question to the presenters because it appears that we have not heard much about the quality of the students
who are at the school age. That is, we have the normal children and we have others, what you can call physically challenged, or those who have disabilities in some way. So I don't know, when they talk of children are all inclusive, or they're talking of a class of children who are normal. We have not heard this in all the presentations, because they are also part of the population who should benefit in one way or the other.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comment, question? Okay. Now, this is a question we are directed to the presenters. When you talk about students, either refugees or returnees or displaced, are you considering those who are physically disabled or not? Yes, thank you.
Oui, oui. Merci. C'est une question assez pertinente. Et j'aimerais préciser que ces élèves sont bien entendu inscrits dans les écoles. Et je n'ai pas mentionné, et il est important de le préciser, que pour les villages de IGAD et de Holhol, nous avons un programme LEC. Il s'agit d'un programme où les élèves, peu importe, sont scolarisés, et à la fin de chaque année scolaire, ils passent à une évaluation qui leur permet d'accéder à un niveau précis. Donc il existe, ce programme-là existe, et pour ce qui est des élèves à besoins spécifiques, nous avons 3 types de programmes. Nous avons les élèves qui sont inscrits au centre, ceux qui sont intégrés et qui suivent les cours en même temps que les élèves normaux, et ceux qui sont scolarisés à la maison. Ce programme-là est unique, et il est effectif uniquement dans un village, celui de IGAD. Donc ce programme-là existe effectivement. Voilà la réponse à la question de M. du Sud-Soudan. Merci.
Thank you. Kenya?
Thank you, Chair. You asked whether our inclusion is packaged to take care of learners with disabilities. I think the answer is yes. We work very closely with our department in charge of disabilities, and all our strategies, they run hand in hand, and therefore our answer is yes. Thank you, Chair.
Somali? Yes, okay, South Sudan.
And I think in my presentation, we presented that there's a great need to cover on those areas in terms of disability or special needs. So that's what we plan for the next year, but in all projects, special need programs are not there.
Thank you. Yes, South Sudan.
Yeah, according to the questions raised by Professor, what do you mean by inclusive? Inclusive, when we talk of inclusive, we don't discriminate. But according to the understanding of other people, they say when you are short, then this is inclusive. No. Inclusive means when you need a special need. And this services in your country, we are tackling all this, especially the Ministry of General Education and Instructions. Until you have even a department in the ministry responsible, entirely responsible for inclusive education. Thank you.
Thank you. Another comment? Okay, excellent. I think I'll give the floor now to my friend, Professor, to give his last remarks. Otherwise, this was a wonderful presentation. And the idea of inclusiveness, I think people have to go further than what has been said earlier. And you mentioned it, that this is going to be a topic which is going to be discussed. And we really need to get into the roots of what we do really mean, because if I ask 10 people now what they really mean by inclusiveness, they will give you different answers also, but they might all be correct. But we will have the same understanding. I doubt. So, thank you, Prof. This is your floor now.
Thank you, Prof. I agree with you. This is one of the wonderful sessions. We have very good presentations, vivid ones from Djibouti and South Sudan. And as someone who has been doing this job for over the last 4 years, I can confess that there has been a remarkable improvement in the way we present what we do in our respective countries. And I think we have learned a lot from each other, and perhaps this is one of the added values that we bring to you as our member states by creating this mutual learning platform, so that we do the jobs consistent with the requirements and also with what our peers are doing. So that's very important. Thank you very much, member states, for the wonderful effort that you have put into your work. And we are very much encouraged by the progress that we have witnessed, despite the slowdown due to the COVID pandemic. Having said that, as the professor proposed, we will move the two presentations to tomorrow, but we have to come early tomorrow. We start sharp 8:30. Sharp 8:30, we will be here and we'll start the presentations. So tomorrow, 8:30, we resume our presentation. And then that session will be followed by reflections on the same issue. If you see the agenda, you have what we are also rolling over for tomorrow, reflections on regional international cooperation on education in emergency, essentially for inclusive education. So what is it that we bring into this conversation, this discussion from regional and international perspective, and how we can strengthen this in delivering better, effective results to people that are in need of our services. This will be done by IGAD and Education Can Network jointly, but ours will be to sort of provoke discussion and throw questions, and also engage the August gathering to reflect on what are the regional and the international perspectives on responding to education in crisis, education in emergency. So we'll have that one. Then the two presentations by Sudan and Uganda. I have another, which is actually for the day per se, I have another very important task for tomorrow morning. One is the round table
discussion, the round table discussion by panelists coming here, addressing different dimensions of education, essentially for refugees and displaced people, but also we can go general. And that one is a high-level roundtable. I will announce the composition. Professor Hulud will be moderating or chairing or assisting, and then Prof will still come back. I want you to be here on this table for that round table discussion. We will have Dr. Samuel Kifle, the Honorable Minister of Education from Ethiopia. And then on COVID, we will have Dr. Bloom and Dr. Osman. I don't see them, both of them here, but I will inform them. Just see to sort of trigger our thinking about COVID, its impact on a wide range of social development issues, but more particularly so in education. And then I'd like to ask you to think about this subject. I've sent the formulated theme tomorrow, this evening with questions, and then each one of us will speak in 2 minutes, and then maybe we'll follow up by a series of 2 or more questions again, and then we'll leave the floor open for further enrichment and reflection from the audience. So tomorrow we have a bit of engaging activities, not just monotonous presentation, but sort of interactive one, and I hope it will be exciting. And I wish you good rest after a very long and hard-working day, and then we meet tomorrow at 8:30. Prof, thank you for staying us this far. And then